Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, your soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach, psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now. Hi, I'm back. And this is part two of a different type of conversation. I really would like you to listen to part one, in which we were talking about relationship deception. And in this part two, we are actually talking about, and this is a topic that came out at the end of part one, that we thought would be something that would be intriguing, exciting, for listeners and seekers to hear more about. And Michelle has graciously agreed to have this conversation in this episode. So Michelle, won't you introduce yourself and we'll take it away.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Holder. I am thrilled to be back on here, and what a great conversation we had in part one. But I am a book and publishing consultant. That's what I do full-time in my business, Winning Proof. And then through my book, The Heart Swindler, Reclaim Your Heart and Stop Falling for Liars, Losers, and Lunatics, I am a relationship deception recovery mentor. And that's a mouthful, and sometimes I get it wrong, but that's what I am, and that's what I do, because I want to see women come to healing and wholeness after relationship deception.
Yeah, and which is wonderful to be able to take the wisdom that you garnered from your experiences and also other people's experiences, and to be able to help those who want assistance to mentor them through the process for their greater healing. As we're talking about this, navigating through the voices of self-confidence, tell me a little bit about where this has come from in terms of this, the ability to navigate and also the area of self-confidence.
Oh boy. It comes from way back, and I recently did a speech about I was taught not to have self-confidence. And that came from an early family structure. It came from a very, very critical mother who just targeted me as the weak one of the herd. And the herd only consisted of 2 kids, but I was deemed the one to criticize. And so that, I was taught from young to have a lack of self-confidence, just ridicule.
The criticism, ridicule.
Yeah, criticism for everything. My friends, she loved my sister's friends, always that my friends were always made fun of in some way or another, all the way through until my 50s. And I remember just family situations. I remember I think it was junior high school, that I was learning to play the flute, and my family is musically inclined, but I'm not. But I was taking a flute class. I was in music, and I remember playing a song or something in front of like a whole family gathering, and my mother prompted me to. Unfortunately, my uncle was a music major at USC. And he said, well, I never heard that song play in that tune, in that note before. And everybody laughed. And to me, I felt like going to my room and hiding under my bed like forever. That was so hurtful to me, because it was I just played a song. I'm a new flute player. I quit it shortly after that, but that was so humiliating to me. And so I still deal with triggers from people laughing at me. I mean, I can laugh at myself. I don't mind, when you laugh at some things and it's lighthearted, fun laughter, but not the cruel laughter. I think I will always deal with those triggers. So that's where my lack of self-confidence comes from. And I think even though I've made great strides, that I will struggle. It feels like I will struggle with that all my life.
It's one of the things you're hitting on is that, first of all, it was crushing to play something and have that type of feedback given. And I think that's crushing, does kind of dampen our attunement, with our own inner self, because as we're growing up, we don't even think about inner self. We're thinking about getting the accolades from the outer self and the actions and the behaviors that we do. But the issue around self-confidence can really begin at an earlier age that moves us into doubting ourselves and doubting our abilities. And that's what that situation sounds like. It began, and that aspect of that, along with your mother, who tend to be more critical. And I usually say there's the CCJ that occurs, that we have to be careful in our family. And I did an episode about that in Barriers and Roadblocks to Slow Progress. So you can go look and listen to that episode on criticism. But what I say, it's criticism, condemnation, and judgment. And these three cousins, if you want to call them, and they're operating in our family members or people around us that is trying to thwart our ability to have confidence in ourselves. And also it leaves this kind of like a stain, on us. And that stain really turns, bigger, or it gets into a deeper color. And we have to realize the soul, no, I've got to figure out a way to say to my soul, no, that's not who I am. I'm not the CCJ. I'm not to be criticized, condemned, or judged. And in fact, I have to call upon something higher. And that is, God, you help me to heal this. And you help me to not be triggered by family members who have created this. Because, as Paul said, I die daily, So you're dying to the old and you're resurrecting to the new. But we have to be intentional about how we go about doing that.
Oh, absolutely. And you can, as a child, you don't know any better. So you just absorb. You think this is real. You don't think you are any different. Maybe you are a failure at everything you do. Maybe you are that. And so you embrace it. And often as we get older, we don't get out of that. And we live in a pattern of self-loathing or self-criticism or devaluing ourselves in such a way that is not healthy for us.
Right. And we sometimes even don't know that it's not healthy for us because we, like you said, we're swimming in it. We're so used to hearing it. So it becomes a part of our identity, but it's not our true identity of the authentic self that you were saying in part one, the authentic self of who we really are. But that authentic self is as if it's kind of this light, and that light can't shine, or it's shining, but it can't be seen, and you can't get contact with it. So it really does require for us to sort through, and realize that in order for us to navigate through to self-confidence, we've got to look at the voices that are going on. So what were there other voices that were taking place?
Well, most of the voices were my family voices. So those were the main ones. I had my maternal grandparents were lovely, and I got to spend, it was such solace for me to spend usually a week during the summer. All of us grandkids would have our turn. And that was, I don't know if I can even describe it, but it was like a vacation from the oppressive feeling, at home. And so it was just lovely to have my grandma cook me everything I wanted, as grandmas often do. And I think we would sit on the couch. I remember sitting on the couch, just holding hands and watching I Love Lucy. And it was just a reprieve. And I felt so accepted I didn't have to be anybody else, period. I could just be me and fully accepted and loved for that. And so that was that. I can't remember any other, it was mainly family. I think that the voices that I heard that were telling me I didn't belong in the room. I wasn't as good as other people. I wasn't as smart as other people. I wasn't as attractive as other people. And so those are the voices that I have carried, not the good ones that just accepted me. We tend to push aside and forget those I would just loved and accepted for who I was. And we remember and embrace the negativity ones. And even as an adult, up until recently, when I would talk to another professional woman, as an example, I would instantly verbally position myself as less, just so we could all understand that I was the lesser of the two people. I wasn't as successful. I wasn't making as much money. So let's just get things straight. So I would perform preemptive strikes to let's just put everybody where they belong. And I always belonged less, in the lesser position.
Yeah, it shows you how the conditioning, I guess I will call it, that happens in our formative years do have an impact upon our adult years. And also how sometimes we do take on this energy of anyone around us is going to be better, because that's what we've learned, that people are better than us. And that's also the ego persona. And sometimes we live in families that have strong ego personas in which it is that a comparison and making sure who's right and who's wrong, and making sure that they get there first. And there's so many different things that the ego, which is the energy going out, is always wanting to do, that is in the mundane and in the materialistic way of living of life, that it loses sight that the ego persona, and I've said this in previous podcasts, is that it should be under the dominion of our soul self, the Christ energy that exists within us as well. But in somehow that soul substance is put in a room and walled off, and the ego persona is there ruling the roost. And we have to be aware of the fact that when we move into adulthood, that you have your place, but your place is not in my master bedroom. Yeah. Your place is go down the living room, stay there. My master bedroom is for me, my soul, my spiritual direction, my spiritual path, and having an understanding of that and integrating those qualities in which I want to show to the outer world, which is the ego persona. I will figure out what those qualities are, and allow it to be still under the direction of my soul self, my Christ self, my higher self, my I am presence, my creator, who is I'm trying to emulate more of and be more like in thought, word, and deed.
Yeah, what you just said is so deep, and I hope that listeners really replay that and really let it sink in, because we often let unworthy people into our master bedroom metaphor. We let voices that have no business speaking into our life into that. And you know what? I want to make a point. Sometimes it's us. Sometimes it's our voices. It's our self-talk that is in there with us. And we have got to have tools to stop that or put on another soundtrack, because we can't, if we keep playing that same soundtrack of disempowerment, well, we're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And as you're talking about that, do you think about what are some of the tools or some of the strategies or changing the soundtracks that women can do to realize that they need to change those soundtracks or tools or use strategies in order to move them past this conditioning that has taken place within them, and that they so literally have it as a part of their thinking and a part of their feelings, and therefore they're creating a reality around it that is not a true reality to who they really are and who their soul is really.
Yes. Well, there's several that I have found, if somebody is a churchgoer, going to church, filling up with God's word, hiding it in your heart, being around positive, supportive, affirming people that are interested in, mutually, of course, but people that are interested in seeing you become your best, pumping in, not false compliments. I'm not talking about that, but just people who can call out your gifts. People, and I have a longtime friend that does this. He lives in Denver. We've known each other 20 plus years, more than 20 years. And he has the gift of encouragement, and he will do that. He will call out those gifts in me, and he's been responsible from his input to just really life-changing decisions, and so I think we need to surround ourselves with positive, supportive, affirming people. Where do you find those? They're not going to knock on your door and present themselves. You have to go seek them. Sometimes civic groups, social groups, sometimes groups you meet people, and you have to experiment. It's not all groups are going to work for all people, but there's websites like Meetup and Eventbrite where you can get out there and with like-minded people, align with your hobbies, align with your interests, go to these meetings, and that's where you're going to find people who are more personal development oriented. Those are the ones that are going to be really positive, supportive, and affirming. Another one is to tape affirmations on your mirror, on your dashboard, on your computer monitor, just constant reminders. In fact, sometimes I take my cell phone and just record things, and then when I'm going to sleep, I'll just play them over and over, just so I get that input of affirmation, positivity. And it doesn't mean that you shut your eye to what's going on around you. Yeah, we live in a fallen world. Yes, the bad things are happening around us. It doesn't mean you go on with like a Joker smile on your face, but you have to flood yourself. And, what you focus on grows. Of course, we all know that. And so you have to focus on that and surround yourself with that, with affirmations, with positive people, with spiritual input, so those are the top three that I can say that have helped me.
I mean, those are great ones, that you're talking about. And I think you talked about another one last in part one, which is self-love. That sometimes one of the tools that we have to use first and foremost is to love ourselves and understand what that is. What is it? What does it mean? Because we've seen love through a different lens, through our family or to people that are around us. But is that truly love? And what is God's love? And so being able to discern, okay, if I'm a part of God, then I have to have that love in me too, because God has that love in him. Or Father, Mother God, if you want to think of it that way. But the God in me is a God above and around me. And so how do I get in tune to that? And so when you're talking about reflections and you're talking about affirmation, are ways in which to help us to be able to do that. Because what we're ultimately trying to do is shift the subconscious pattern that is going on. And when we can shift that subconscious pattern by being more focused on what we want, and that is love and being loved and knowing how to love and working on that with ourselves and not thinking so much is going to have to come all from outside of ourselves. It really begins coming from within ourselves, because as my mother used to say, your acre of diamonds is in your own backyard, and your backyard is you.
Amen to that. That is so true. Yeah.
So when we can think about confidence is a building, we need to build it. And sometimes we are feeling that there's a deficit because we get anxious or we get doubtful or we get fearful or whatever. But you know what God says? He says, I'm not going to say you're not going to have fear, you're not going to have doubt. He said, but I will be with you. I will help you through it. So we never think about that if we want to have confidence, and we always say, God, help me, guide me, direct me in self-confidence. What does this feel like? Let me get a flavor for it. Let me see it in others, and how I may want to emulate that a little bit more in order to be able to garner it within ourselves. But it first begins with our thinking and our feeling. And so if we're always having a negative thought and then we want to be confident, and then we're having a negative feeling, but we want to be confident, you're creating a barrier to your
Yes.
self-confidence.
And that brings up such a great point, is that when we self-depreciate, and you and I talked about, there's a humorous way to do that. And that, sometimes in some contexts, it's funny and it's lighthearted. But when we're constantly self-depreciating, it's funny, peculiar funny, because people start treating us like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that I find that very another pattern, which has been the kind of the theme of our conversations, is that we create a pattern that we wonder why. Well, they're treating me as if I'm less. Well, that's because I've said I was less.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's a huge point, is because people would treat us according to our self view or what we're saying about ourselves. And so that often happens.
It's right on target to what there's a book out that was written a long time ago and by Murphy, and that's The Power of the Subconscious Mind. And the power of the subconscious mind is it's like a blank take. It cannot say no to what you're saying to yourself or feeling about yourself. And it just records and records and records and then tries to give you what you want. But you're saying, well, I don't want that. Well, why did you think that? Why did you feel that? And so it's incumbent upon us to be able to say, that's old. What is the new that I would like to record? And my subconscious do what you were saying earlier, Michelle, about affirmations and positive statements, but they need to be something that we believe about ourselves or that we're aspiring to, that is I usually call them virtues, the virtues of Christ, the virtues of the saints that we want to emulate more of, because that's a believable. They did it. We can do it too.
That's so true. And just, I know the Bible talks about being a virtuous woman, and men can be virtuous as well. But I just think that having those virtues and being solidified in them and believing, like, change your thoughts, change your life, having those so strong in us and unflinching that, no, that's when people are not, including ourselves, are not allowed into the master bedroom, because, no, I think like this. And not that people with opposing views are not allowed in our sphere. I have many friends who believe different things than me. That's okay, but we respect one another. It's not about that. It's about, no, you're a negative, critical person and you're going to constantly demean me and devalue me. No, you don't get to come into that room, and by us changing our thoughts about ourselves, then we get to stay in that room. And we have the rights and the privileges of staying in that room. So I think we're all under construction. I don't know if any of us ever say, okay, I'm good. I don't have any more work to do. I have attained everything. I don't know if that is even possible. I don't think it is. I think we're all under construction. There's always, until we take our last breath, there's always room for further development, for further growth, further EQ. Emotional intelligence.
I love that. I think we're all always under construction if we're going to live on planet Earth. We're always, the mission is to continue to grow and continue to evolve. And that's what the soul wants us to continue to be able to do and to learn from the experiences. And even if we have that experience several times, the soul is saying, how you're learning, how are you growing, how are you moving forward, how you're not trying to get set back. Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. And that's the direction that we want with our self-confidence too, is that we may have many voices that go in our head and many voices that may go externally to us, but how do we anchor into what we've been talking about, these values and these virtues that allows us to be say, this is what I know about who I am. This is what I've read through the inspirational reading or through church, as you're saying, of who I am. And so I'm going to keep focused around that because there will always be voices around us trying to tell us something different.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really who God says that we are. It's really our creator who says, this is what I think of you. This is what I've done for you. This is how much I love you. It's standing firm in that. So if you have those outside voices, because there are some circumstances that people stay in, you can't escape. You're part of a family system. You're maybe you're married to somebody who is just so verbally destructive, and because of one reason or another, you can't leave, or you won't leave, or maybe you're just entrenched in a family system where it's not possible to remove yourself. So you have to learn to navigate through that, but it's also, you have to remember, no matter what situation you're in, that, who does God say that you are? How much does he love you? No question. Like you talked about before, the love part is just, if you believe that, everything else can be dealt with.
Yeah, and I was just reflecting or thinking about when you were saying that so wonderfully, is that sometimes we're put in situations like that, which we find that it's not time for us to move on, but maybe we're there to learn to love ourselves, love at the level that you can the other person that's going here and not be moved by them and their negativity or their doubts or their fears or whatever. But if you're in a situation that is harmful, certainly get out of that situation. But it's really, we don't know. I think we could get into certain situations that there's still a lesson to learn. There's still something to garner. There's still something to grow in ourselves. And once we have grown in that, the door opens, another door opens for us. Another person steps in to give us guidance or direction. It may come through a coach or through a minister or through a friend or a confidant, but it allows us to be able to support us as we're moving through the situation. So it allows us to be able to maybe grow in confidence. You don't know, those situations, but you're going to have to call upon the inner wisdom of yourself and God to help you to navigate through the situation.
Yeah, you absolutely have to. And that's why, and as an adult, as a mature adult, it's the reality of it. It's hard to make lifelong friends at this age. The friends that I have in my inner circle, I've known for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. At this point, okay, mid 60s, I'm not 70, 80, it's like, it's harder, I think, in today's landscape with the disconnection and everything to make those lifelong friends. And the lifelong friends that we've made earlier in life. And so we have to either cultivate those already established relationships and not be afraid to say, hey, you know what? I'm going through this and I need some extra support now. I need some, or what do you think? It's not weird to ask your long-term friends that you trust and, you've been with, to say, name my 3 top strengths. What do you think I'm the best at? And then you can do that for them as well, but just be there to support each other. And so nurture those relationships and not be afraid to go out and try to build new ones. But it does take time. It takes longer, it seems like. Sometimes you put yourself out there and it's just like, oh my gosh, I have nothing in common with this person. And then you just, okay, you got to meet another fellow human being, have a conversation, and then move on and try something different. But you don't get any of that unless you try. Mm-hmm. So you have to put yourself out there, and vulnerability tell women there's strength and vulnerability, but it takes vulnerability to put yourself out there and meet new people, maybe be a solo traveler. I'm not opposed to going on a cruise by myself or traveling by myself, because I've never met a stranger. I'm going to meet people along the way, have great conversations, find out about people, what they do, all that. So that's really important.
Those are very good points that you're making, and especially the point about based upon the age that where we're at in our life, it may require different directions or strategies or tools or how we want to put ourselves out there. So that's a very good point. And I think you're making a delightful point that you're open to entertaining other people and their perspectives about things and just having a conversation. If it doesn't go anywhere in that conversation in terms of a friendship, then that's okay. But it was nice to have the conversation. And that also builds a muscle of confidence. Because if we're willing to have the conversation, that there's a measure of confidence that we have in our conversations that we'll be having with the particular people that we're interacting with. So all that is very positive and very good. But it does mean that we have to do less of that self-deprecating that you were talking about early. Well, I didn't really say it that right or say it that good in that particular meeting that I had. It's like, no. There's some point that you have to say internally with yourself, I will no longer entertain this issue about there must be something the matter with me. No. Yes. If God is within me, I am okay. I'm just learning to improve and do better and better in each day, in each and every way.
Absolutely. Yes. And you have to approach situations and conversations differently. If you want people to treat you differently, you have to think and act differently. And that's been a journey for me too, coming from, just criticizing myself verbally, putting myself in lesser positions. If I want people to treat me with dignity and treat me like I belong in the room, I have to think and act like I belong in the room. And that's making a conscious decision to change the direction of conversations, not controlling a conversation or not dominating a conversation, but just adjusting yourself, navigating through yourself too.
Mm-hmm. So, yes, as if there's two directions of navigation of the internal dialogue that's going on within you, and then also the navigation of externally, your interactions and your behaviors that you're having with others. So it's a kind of dual navigation that's taking place.
Yes, it is. And we have to do both if we want high quality relationships going forward. And relationships are not always, I think friendships and relationships are different. If we want casual friendships, hey, join a group that meets once a quarter. Have a great time. All go your own way. That's different than having a relationship with somebody, which is depending on one another. Hey, I need this. I'm sick. Can you, say no more. I had some church friends when I had a really bad flu, I think last Thanksgiving. Not this, but the last one. And they were just over there. I said, I'll leave money on the porch. I don't want anybody to see me. I didn't have to, don't worry about your money. Her and her husband went and got a whole bunch of medicine and soups and bags of groceries and dropped them off at my doorstep, and they did that twice during a week's period. And and I would do, now I'm more friends with her, of course, but I would do the same. She has her husband and she got sick and her husband was there to take care of her. But me as a single, man, I appreciated that, But I would also like to do that and would do that if I had a relationship. Oh, I'm sick. I'm not feeling well. Say no more, and that's what relationships are, is that healthy interdependence. And being able to be yourself and be loved just as yourself and not have to perform in any kind of way.
Wow, that's nicely said. So if there was something that you would like to leave with the seekers in terms of food for thought for them, as we're talking about this notion of navigating through the voices to self-confidence, what would that be, Michelle?
That is a great question. And I think what I would like to leave is that just let me breathe just for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to answer authentically and I want to leave a real meaty nugget. But I think it would be just be very, very careful about the voices you listen to, including your own. And just be very selective about what you let in. And I call fear, doubt, and unbelief. I call them the triplets. The triplets are here to visit, and they want to move in, and they want to stay for a week, and they want to take over. Fear, doubt, and unbelief. Don't let those triplets in. Put up guardrails in your mind, in your thoughts, and everything. So be very selective of what voices you let in to your sphere. And this is your garden.
Your mind is your head, your being.
This is your equity. And be very protective about what goes in. And of course, we all heard garbage in, garbage out, but flowers in, flowers out. So let the good stuff come in as just a barrage of good stuff, and let the seeds of that grow some flowers, grow a garden, and then give the flowers to other people.
How nice. And that's all what the soul wants, is to grow the good flowers, and which are good virtues and values and beliefs that you'll have, and as well as it wants to serve and give it to others, because through the service, the soul grows as well. So thank you, listeners and seekers, for listening to this episode. Michelle, it's been a delight to have you back. And you know what? I would like to end with the word of saying, realize self-confidence allows you to be your best self. So keep at it. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.